Hello, this is my November reading wrap-up video because in November I read some books and now I'm going to go over those books and talk about what I thought about them. So in November I read 18 books. 4 of the books that I read were physical copies and then the other 14 were digital, which is kind of embarrassing because I have a really big physical TBR backlog that I really need to get through, but I keep reading digital books instead of reading the physical books, so whoops. I'm gonna go over the physical editions first and then go on to the digital editions, and I'm gonna go more or less in chronological order. So the first physical book that I read in November was The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. I actually started this in October, and I didn't finish it until like November 3rd. So this is a mystery thriller book about this kind of Sherlock and Watson type duo, but the Sherlock of the duo has been arrested and they have to go on this ship, and the Sherlock of the duo is put in this cell on the ship, and the assistant has to kind of like take over as dark and mysterious things start happening on the ship, and he has to figure it out with the help of a young woman who is like curious and lively and, you know, whatever. You get what I mean. I didn't love this book. This one has been sitting on my TBR for a long time, and the cover is, it's a really nice cover. I just don't think this book was for me. I think it had the right amount of whimsy, but the wrong amount of descriptions of diarrhea, which was once, which is one too many. So I think also the ending was kind of like, I feel like for most of the mystery I was kind of like, yeah, I don't really give a shit, like this is just stuff that's happening, I don't really care. And then with the ending, for mysteries I want it to be like, oh my god, that's so cool, like I love to see how like all these things wrap up and like tie together, but the ending for this one was just kind of like, yeah, I guess that makes sense, sure, but it was still pretty good. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it, I just also didn't love it, so yeah. Moving on, the second book that I read in November was Guards by Terry Pratchett. This is the first book in the Night Watch sub-series of Discworld. I've read some books in the Discworld like Pantheon before. I read Mort and the Color of Magic, and I didn't really like either of those, but also I read them when I was in high school in 2019, so I don't know, maybe I was just too young for them. Not that I think there's an age restriction on Terry Pratchett, but I don't know, maybe I wasn't in the right mindset, okay? I wasn't in that Terry Pratchett grindset mindset. But Guards I really liked. I thought it was really fun. It was kind of like a romp, you know, like I was just having so much fun. So this is a book about a group of night watchmen. Their role in society has kind of been lessened. People don't really give a shit about them anymore. They don't really have that much power. And then this mysterious group is trying to summon this dragon, and the night watchmen kind of have to step up and take care of this dragon and take care of this problem. It's kind of like an absurdist comedy. It's really fun. It's really fantastical. I really liked it. I highly recommend it. Still not my favorite book that I've ever read. I give it 4 stars, but I do think it's really good. The third physical book that I read in November was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This book has been sitting on my TBR for a really long time, and by really long time I mean probably since 2019. So this book survived COVID with me and I still had not read it. It was actually very good. Laini Taylor, I think, is kind of a wordsmith. Like the way that she describes things and the world building, it's just so lush and vivid. I think that's really the draw of this book. I think plot-wise, it was pretty good. It was pretty interesting, but I wasn't like astounded by like, I wasn't riveted by the plot specifically. It was more like I was so interested in the world and the writing. This book is about a little orphan named Laszlo Strange, and his dream is to visit the city that like is maybe potentially mythical. He doesn't really know, but there are all these stories about it and he's so sure that it's real. And then one day these warriors from the city come to visit his city, and they're like, hey, we need some talented people to come with us because we have some problems in our city and we want people to come help us. They don't choose Laszlo at first. They choose other people who are more talented, an alchemist, a builder, and then he kind of like, please bring me too. And they're like, all right. And then he goes. There's also another story in here about these children who are living in the city, above the city, in the citadel. Overall, I highly recommend. I thought it was very good. I thought it was really interesting, but not like jaw-dropping. I think the ending too was kind of like weak. It didn't inspire excitement in me to read the next book. I mean, of course I'm excited to read the next book, but like there have been other books that I've been more excited to read the sequel to, you know? But generally this one was very good. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. I read one other physical book, but I don't have the copy with me because it's my dad's. It was called I Must Be Dreaming by Roz Chast. And Roz Chast, I think, is a comic artist for the New York Times. And in this book she just talks about her dreams and like draws out some of her dreams, and it was interesting and funny, but you could tell that it was written by like a 60-year-old woman. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that one. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It wasn't like amazing, but it was like, you know, a good way to pass the time. So moving on to digital books that I read on my Kindle. Starting off, I'm gonna go over all the books that I read by Mayne, because I read a lot of fucking books by Mayne. So to start, I read Win, which is Monstrous 3.5. It is a novella. It's part of the Monstrous series, and it follows Win and Danny on like a little excursion they go on. And it was interesting, it was funny, but Win and Danny are not my favorite couple in the series, so I was kind of like, oh, you know, whatever. And then I also read Lore, which is Monstrous number 7. It's the 7th book in the series, because I was continuing my Monstrous journey that I started in October. I really liked it. Didn't love it. Wasn't my favorite in the series. I gave it 4 stars. Monstrous is a series that is about like humans dating monsters that have come through this rift and have started an apocalypse in the human world. It's really interesting. Lore is maybe the first one that takes place primarily in the monster world, which I thought was really interesting. It's about Lore and Jugs, and Jugs is the human, obviously. He's very gay and very much from the 80s. It's kind of incredible. So I really liked him, and I liked Lore. I felt like the book kind of like was a little slow at some points, but otherwise I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. I would recommend the Monstrous series as a whole if you're interested in reading that. Moving forward, I read Monstrous Short Stories collection, which is Monstrous 7.5. Technically, it's just a whole bunch of short stories about the couples that we've already read about, and it was fine. It was like 400 pages, and they have like a new novella that's, I don't know, maybe 10,000 words, I think, about Jamie and Rook, and I thought they were cute little couple. That's what I'm gonna say about that, because, you know, this is a fucking series, and I don't know how much more to expand upon it. So anyway, keeping with Mayne, I also read Whispers in the Dark, which is the first in a new series that she's doing with Nikole Knight, called Black Oasis. Whispers in the Dark is about this guy who is like horribly abused by his family, but he has this monster under his bed who is kind of like protecting and saving him. And it turns out that the monster comes from this world that's like a video game that he plays, but they're not necessarily the same thing, but they kind of are. I don't really know. I really liked it. A lot of the reviews were like, I didn't like this because it was like torture porn, blah blah blah, whatever, like the guy's life is like so sad and whatever. But I didn't think it was that sad. Like, he lives a kind of shitty life, but I don't think it's like excessive, and there are enough cute happy moments, and it has a happily ever after, which I don't think would happen if we were reading torture fucking porn. You know what I mean? Like, please. What's that one? A Little Life? People love to fucking Little Life, and people are shouting about this shit. Jesus. Anyway, I really liked Whispers in the Dark. If you are easily like triggered by things like abuse, and there's a little hint of incest, but it's not like a main theme of the book, I would steer clear. But if those things aren't a big concern for you, I think it's really cute. If you have read and liked Mayne's other works, I would recommend it. I also read Mayne's entire folk series, starting with Mortal Skin. This is a series about this guy who is apparently half fae, and he doesn't know it, and he gets kidnapped into the fairy world, and there are these 4 fairy princes in the Unseelie Court, I think. They're part of the Unseelie Court, and they're like dangerous, but he starts falling in love with one, and the prince starts falling in love with him, and they have like an illicit romance, and then there's like drama and shit and blah blah blah, whatever, and it carries out over the 3 books. The first book, Mortal Skin, I thought was the best. I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. It was cozy and fun and interesting, and I thought there were interesting things happening. The other books become, I think, more intense and more plot heavy, but I really did like Mortal Skin. I think Mortal Skin was very fun. Forgotten Vows was okay. I liked Forgotten Vows, didn't love Forgotten Vows. I didn't love it as much as the first one, which was depressing to me. I won't elaborate on, you know, what happens in the book because it's a series, so you should read the first one first. But I gave the second one 4 stars. And King of Death, which is the newest book in the series, it literally came out, I think, November 17th maybe, and I read it November 18th because I was on that Mayne grind, okay? King of Death I was also not astounded by. I also gave it 4 stars. I think, again, the first book in the series is the best. I liked the ending of the trilogy. I thought it was like a cute, sweet ending, but I also didn't love it. I think there were a lot of interesting things happening in Forgotten Vows and King of Death, but I also feel like sometimes it just was maybe even too fluffy for me. Like there was just too much fluff and like cute happiness going on, you know what I mean? Even though there was a lot of not cute happiness going on. There's also a lot of drama and like miscommunication, which I was just like, all right, calm down. So that's everything that I read by Lily Mayne. So we're gonna move on from Lily Mayne now. The first book that I read in November that was not by Lily Mayne was Cair by Eryn Hawke. It's about this guy who's living in this world that is like half human, but it's connected to the fairy world and they can like travel in between. And there's like drama because Cair, the fairy that he falls in love with, is on a time limit. He only has 100 years to live in the human world, and his time is almost up, even though they're falling in love. I did not like Cair. I really did not like Cair. Oh girl, I did not like Cair. The main character, his name is Luca. I didn't like him. He had like a lot of these shitty, silly quips that he would just shoot out all the time, and I was like, shut the fuck up. Somebody duct tape his mouth closed. Cair, who is, you know, the other side of this relationship, is also not very interesting. He's fine. Most of his thoughts are like, I want to breed Luca. And it's just like, okay, as long as you're doing that, Luca will be fucking quiet, which I will appreciate. So, I don't know. Get to it. Cair was also 400 pages long, and it definitely did not need to be 400 pages long. About 50 pages of that was plot, and the other, 350 was bullshit, romance developing, sex, whatever. But their relationship was not interesting, and also I hated Luca, and I didn't really care about Cair, so it was like, why? It's insta-love and lust, so why do you have 300 fucking pages of just the romance developing if it's fucking insta-love? What is the point? And it's whatever. Anyway, I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. Would have given it 1, but I don't like giving 1 star to things that I read. It feels wrong to me. But also I really didn't like it. If you need more fairies in your life, I guess try it out, but I would not recommend it personally, so Moving on, I read A Soul to Keep by Opal Reyne, which is the first in a series called Duskwalker Brides. I liked A Soul to Keep. I didn't love it. It's about this girl who has kind of been shunned by her village, but there's this monster called the Duskwalker that comes every like 10 years to like get a sacrifice, and she's the sacrifice, so she goes with him, but then they fall in love and blah blah blah, whatever. It was fine. It wasn't like awful. I give it 3 stars. It wasn't exceptional to me. Rhea is our female main character. She was fine. I didn't love her, she didn't mesh with me. Orpheus was the male main character. He's the Duskwalker. He was fun. He was cute. He was kind of silly. I liked him. I don't know, it was not the best. It was just okay. Moving on, I read 3 books by Ruby Dixon. I finished the Ice Planet Barbarians series, so I read Barbarians Treasure and Barbarians Bride. For those of you who don't know, Ice Planet Barbarians is a series about these girls who are crash landed on this planet of ice and snow, and they are saved by these Ice Planet Barbarians, which is why it's called Ice Planet Barbarians. Barbarians Treasure and Barbarians Bride are 2 books that revisit the original girls who crash landed on the planet. They like goes back in time to tell their stories in like flashbacks, and they were both just okay. Barbarians Treasure I gave 2 stars because it had weird foot fetish shit in it, and I did not like that because I don't have a foot fetish and it really makes me uncomfortable. And then Barbarians Bride I gave 3 stars. I liked it more, but I also didn't love it. It was kind of boring, kind of just middle of the road. I also continued with Ice Home, which is a spin-off series of Ice Planet Barbarians. So I read Angie's Gladiator, which is the 4th in that series. Also didn't love that one. The whole thing about Angie was that Angie was pregnant, so like you get to see her have birth and like love her child, and I'm just like, I don't really give a shit about her child. I'm sorry to say it. God. There were a lot of funny moments in this book, but it just ended up not hitting. Moving along, I read Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. It's like a romantic-y story about this girl who's part of this like cult where she can't see, but she can see with magic, so it doesn't matter. But then these vampire conquerors like come and they want to take over her land, so like she steps in to like spy on them, and then she and the vampire conqueror fall in love. The thing about this one was that I really didn't care about the plot, which kind of sucks. I feel like I have this problem with a lot of romanticities where it's like you either care about the plot, like the fantasy aspects of it, or you care about the romance. And in this one I cared about the romance, and I didn't really give a shit about the plot. I thought there were interesting things going on, like the main girl, I think her name is Selena. Selena's cult is really interesting. Like, it's interesting to read about, but also the plot was just not very interesting. Like, there was a lot of fighting, and like Selena is also kind of this like smart-mouthed, badass, impulsive bitch who like has no critical thinking skills, which I feel like that's the main character of basically all these romantasy books, and I'm sick of it. I wanna see a normal, I wanna see like an anxious girl. Give me an anxious girl. Give me a girl who shits her pants in fear every time she sees a vampire. Anyway, I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I thought their relationship was nice at least, but I didn't care about the plot. I just wanted to see the happily ever after, which is the only reason I finished it, so, you know. I read King of the Dark by Ariana Nash, which is the first book in a trilogy called The Prince's Assassin. King of the Dark is an enemies to lovers story about this guy who was in this war with elves, and now he's been enlisted by the prince of his kingdom to help protect him, because the prince of the kingdom is about to get assassinated, but also the prince of the kingdom is like cruel and like an evil guy. This mercenary guy starts falling in love with the prince's guard, and like drama and blah 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 whatever. It was fine. I like enemies to lovers in theory. This was another one where like I didn't really give a crap about the plot, and the books are so long. They're like 400 pages long, I think. So like you have to read through this thick thing, and you just want to get to the happily ever after, but because of the trilogy, you don't get to the happily ever after until the fucking 3rd book. I want the characters to get together and be happy and like have a happy little life, but I have to sit through all this plot that I don't really care about to do that. So anyway, I gave this book 3 stars. I continued on to the 2nd book, Reign of Darkness. I also gave that one 3 stars. It was kind of just a continuation of the 1st book, you know, still an enemies to lovers dynamic, blah 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 whatever. It was fine. Again, way too much plot. I was like, and I really don't give a shit about the plot. Maybe give me reason to care about the plot, and then I will like your book. But they didn't do that. Moving on, the final book that I read in November was The Aliens Kidnapped Omega by Sienna Sway. Yes. I'm like embarrassed to say that I read this. I read it because I was like, this is a really funny name. I thought the title was so funny, so I had to read it. And then I read it, and it was like, it was a romp. It read very much like fan fiction. If you're like, I want a book that is basically fan fiction, you will love The Aliens Kidnapped Omega. It's about this guy who comes to this planet of aliens to like make peace with them, but they sniff him and they're like, you're an Omega and you shouldn't be out. Okay, Omegas need to be inside. They need to be protected. So he gets stolen and he's like, I'm not an Omega, but you know, he is. It was fun. I think I didn't take it too seriously. It was 300 pages and I read it in like 2 hours. So I definitely was not reading very closely. I rated it 4 stars because it was fun. So anyway, that's everything that I read in November. I think the standouts of this month were definitely Mortal Skin by Lily Mayne, and probably like Strange the Dreamer. I really like Strange the Dreamer. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Cair was really fucking bad, and you know what I mean. And everything else was just, anyway, that's all for me. Bye.